Bull, you mentioned those off-field allegations. We got a little more update to what we talked about yesterday in terms of the off-field saga with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun was asked about it at his press conference, specifically when he learned of said allegations, and here's how Deshaun answered that question.
Did you have any idea that this lawsuit was coming when you were playing Sunday?
No, sir. I found out exactly whenever everyone else found out.
So Deshaun says he found out on Monday, just like the rest of us, via social media. A few hours later, Tony Busby, the attorney defending the woman who was pressing the complaint, released a statement. Remember, Rusty Hardin released a statement on Tuesday. This is Tony Busby's statement on Wednesday. Tony Busby says, quote, "We reached out to attorney Rusty Hardin's office for 10 months in an attempt to resolve this case. We knew this case was the most serious and egregious case brought against Watson to date, and our client, who is rightfully traumatized by these events, wanted to attempt a private resolution. We thought that was the best approach given the media storm that occurred surrounding the legion of other claims. Unfortunately, Watson's team, or maybe his lawyers, couldn't or wouldn't give this case the attention it was due. Mr. Hardin has now tried to contact us since we filed suit. Unfortunately, we see that now as too little too late. But we are officers of the court, and we will give Mr. Hardin and his esteemed team the respect he has earned, and it will work with him to progress this case in an efficient manner. With regard to whether Deshaun Watson knows who this woman is, I hope that that's his defense. He is well aware of what he did. This case is strong, and now that we are going to have filed it, we will pursue it with vigor. We have heard from the NFL. We will respond in due course. Finally, you should know that although I wasn't aware of her claims, Mr. Watson was well aware of this victim and her claims immediately after it occurred, and Watson was reminded back when we filed the first lawsuit for other multiple victims. I wasn't part of that. I can understand, given the number of women that Mr. Watson has interacted with, that he could forget some or many of them. However, given the nature of this alleged conduct in the case, I expect this incident is something he wouldn't soon forget. We look forward to a trial by jury," end quote. So Deshaun says he found out Monday. Jane Doe's attorney says they've been trying to reach Deshaun Watson and his team for 10 months. Someone's lying in this instance. We have no idea who. But it seems like this saga is never going to end.
Yeah, I'm surprised he answered any questions at all because, we talked about this and his lawyer put it out a statement. So I'm surprised he even answered that. But I guess that's, I don't know. If he knew beforehand that it comes out that he knew, you don't want to get caught in a lie is all I'm saying. I know maybe he didn't know. And maybe Rusty Hardin knew but kept it from him. I think that's possible.
Yeah, I think, look.
I don't think it matters whether he knew or not. But
the most interesting part that I see in that thing is the part where he says he looks for by a trial by jury.
She does it,
right?
Well, it's her lawyer.
Yeah, so that's what her lawyer says. So for me, okay, you're right and entitled to that. If I'm a person who is standing by my innocence and I'm saying that I didn't do it, okay, let's go to trial. Well, because I'm not at some point, we got to come to a resolution, and it's very easy to say, all right, well, I'm going to settle out of court. Obviously, settling out of court is not something that has stopped the allegations from coming, right? So if someone is alleging that I'm doing something, let's have a conversation about, all right, what happened, and that's what our system is about, trial by jury. So let's talk about it and let's get to it. I don't know when it's going to happen,
but
it's
not going to be for a while.
It might not be for a while, but I mean, Tyvis, wouldn't you want that?
I mean, this is.
Hey, Ty, hold on.
1 second.
We have a little bit of breaking news on this exact topic, real quick.
Oh.
According to Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, in a statement issued to Pro Football Talk by Tony Busby, says, quote, "We intend to interview with the NFL in 2 weeks. This coming week, however, I have to go to the Coast Guard hearings in South Carolina regarding the Titans' submissible implosion because I represent a victim's family from that. When I return, I intend to make my client available for interview along with 2 individuals who spoke to her immediately after the assault. I also have video to share that will be pertinent to this case," end quote.
Oh.
That was literally 3 minutes ago from Pro Football Talk and Mike Florio.
That's interesting. I wonder who those individuals are. Are they
no
police
idea.
officers?
No other
Are they
context
friends?
than what I just read.
I don't know.
But yeah, if I'm him and I continue to say that I'm innocent and I done nothing wrong, yeah, go ahead. Take it. Let's take it to trial so I could go ahead and prove that I was good, that I was innocent, that I did none of this. And I think that maybe I don't know if that would change a lot of people's perspective about the other cases that he settled from. But in this one, which is one of the most alarming ones that he has, if he's proven innocent on this one, then like people was going to be like, all right, at least you're not calling him a rapist.
Right.
The problem in terms of any potential vindication, if he is innocent, is that in these court cases, most of the time, in most cases, you're found not guilty. Maybe there's not enough evidence, or whatever. Mm-hmm. First of all, it's not a criminal trial, so there's not going to be a guilt or innocence. Essentially, yes, if the jury finds against you, then they're saying they think you did it, and if they find for you, they're saying they don't think you did it.
They could throw it out too.
There's probably not going to be a situation where. Well, I shouldn't say that, probably not. In most cases, it's not, even if you win as the defendant, it's not 100% clear that you are innocent. And so unless there are some facts that prove his innocence, which is not necessarily fair, but unless that happens, he's not going to change public opinion for the most part.
The public opinion. So, I've always stated on this.
Yeah.
We only got what we base our lives on. One of them is, did I criminally do something? Right? If the criminal justice system says I didn't do it, okay, cool. Let's go civilly. If I win the civil case and they say, hey, I was not found liable for that, then I'm going to be honest, I don't give a damn what nobody in the public think. They can kiss my ass.
and that's the attitude everybody should have. Unfortunately for him, we've seen that all of this likely has affected him.
Yes, it does.
And none of this is good for him or the Browns.
It does. And that's why at some point in time, you got to make a stand and say, look, I'm not going to live my life walking around waiting on the next shoe to drop. I didn't go to jail. People do these mental gymnastics about why when the court says that really doesn't necessarily mean that you're innocent. It just means that X, Y, and Z. No. That's why I'm gonna go to a courtroom. I don't care what you say in your living room and about how you figure that you've done the mental gymnastics on it. I would be excited to say, let's go to trial. Because I want a trial with jury members of my peers. That's what this country is built on.
But it didn't happen with the other cases. He settled.
Hey, look, this is more serious, right?
Yeah.
They said they wanted to go to court.
Right.
The plaintiffs.
Initially, the plaintiffs had said they wanted to go to court, and DESHAUN Watson said he wanted to go to court. And neither stood by that. Both sides settled. Now they're both going to say that again here.
But
how if it actually goes to court?
Yeah, right. Yeah. But if I'm telling him, how did that work out for you the first time? When you was paying all the
DESHAUN Watson.
Yeah, how did it work out for you?
It didn't work out.
It didn't work out.
No.
So are you going to pay this person too? Because if you pay her, who's to say Tony Busby? Because I don't know if there's a statute of limitation. I believe it's 5 years, right?
Yeah, well, that's what somebody
Mike said. It could be, but
it's 5 years for this.
Okay, correct. So guess what? There could be somebody that comes up next week or next month or whatever the case may be. Yeah. At the end of the day, you just want a resolution to it, right? That's what his team should want, a resolution.
Right, but if I'm him, when he settled in those other cases, I feel like if I were innocent, I wouldn't settle. But again, I'll admit I'm not in that situation, so I don't know for sure what I would do. But in those cases, it was inappropriate behavior that he was being accused of. Mm-hmm. This, he's essentially being accused of rape.
Yeah. Okay,
he is. So if he settles here, to some degree, you could argue he's maybe not admitting, but he didn't fight to clear his name on that. So that's a lot more serious to settle for this than those.
Well, but also let's keep in mind, the goal of civil suits is to get paid. The goal is not to criminally prosecute you, right?
That is correct.
So he's going to use everything in his purview to get his client paid, and that's what his job is, right?
Right.
And so, of course, he already has a timeline. The timeline is, okay, well, this is we trying this in public. So yes, she's open for interviews, right? Because while she's doing interviews, guess what? All the allegations, all the details are out there, and guess what? They'll tell him not to say anything.
Right.
Every single time she comes out,
Right.
and people hear her testimony, he's sitting back playing football games. And guess what? Public is going to say, I don't know. I don't like what I'm hearing right now.
Right.
So at the end of the day, the pressure is to get Deshaun Watson to say, look, don't you just want to get back to football?
Yeah.
That's
what they're trying to do, sure.
Do you really want to hear all these allegations? You want to hear all the salacious details? Why don't you just go ahead, settle, get it done with, and go on about your life?
Yeah. If I were this woman, again, I was just saying what I would do if I were Watson. I'm not Watson. I'm not in his situation. I'll say it again. If I were this woman, which obviously I can relate to even less, but I would not have hired Tony Busby, even though he is good at his job.
Why?
Because I think there are some people, I am not one of them, but there are some people that will believe her less because he seems so sleazy. If she had hired a different lawyer, I think, and ultimately it doesn't matter. I'm just speaking out loud, and public perception really doesn't necessarily matter. And we may never know who this woman is, especially if they end up settling. But if I were her and this had happened to me, I wouldn't want to go to a lawyer that looks like a sleazeball. And he came off as a sleazeball. He's apparently good at his job.
Right.
And I find it impossible to believe that all the women he represented were lying. Doesn't mean some of them weren't, but for me, I find it. But still, even though he may have been helping some victims, he still comes off as sleazy.
Let me ask you, if they went to trial,
Yeah.
and it did come out that he was guilty, could criminal charges be brought upon him after that?
Well, I guess
because
Sure.
to me,
I mean, I don't know enough about the
to me, this is like if that. Like, that's jail. I'm not, the
No,
money
not
ain't
necessarily. I mean, OJ was found guilty in civil court.
So basically, it's by the preponderance of evidence. So basically, it's more likely did you do it or did you not do it. So he can lose. And they say 51%. If 51% say you probably did it compared to 49. Only reason I say this is because Donald Trump just went through this type of case.
Yeah.
Not saying that we're comparing the two, but what they're doing is just saying, okay, did it probably happen or not? Criminally, it's more difficult to prove a criminal case and to get a conviction in a criminal case because it's a higher bar standard.
But
it's like guesswork.
But what it is terrible. Like,
Yeah.
I know that, but again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not trying to pretend to be one.
Maybe we'll get a lawyer on here.
In a civil case, the jury is asked, which side do you believe more, essentially, right? Whereas in a criminal case, they're not asking which side do you believe more.
No, you got to have the evidence.
They're saying, is this person guilty, what's the term? Guilty
beyond a reasonable doubt. Now,
so there could be in a civil case there could be some doubt, but you're like, it's more likely true than not.
That is why it's difficult in these cases because the evidence that you would get, if you don't immediately go and file a case or go get a kit, you don't have the physical evidence. You don't have the police report. You don't have any of those things that are concrete that says, I went and took the steps to file a claim that I was physically assaulted.
Now, I guess we don't know for sure that she didn't do those things.
So,
as far as we know, she didn't, but I guess we don't know that for sure. All right, Mike, what do you got for us?
Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the offensive line, the guys that are going to protect Deshaun Watson.